started, we need to know what an integer is, and then we'll actually start adding them together. Before I get started though, I do want to suggest that if you have not already printed out the video guide, pause the video, go ahead and print that out, and then come back. I'm going to be using that sheet to go over what we're talking today, and we'll be doing examples from that sheet together. So to start off, integers. Okay, an integer is a positive number, which most of us are very used to using. All right, but it also includes negative numbers as well. And that they are positive or negative whole numbers, which means we won't be using decimals or fractions, which personally I like. So we're going to look at a few examples of this and then go ahead and move on to adding integers. So first of all, positive numbers, again, we're used to seeing those. That would be like positive 5 or positive 18 or positive 3,627. All of these are positive numbers, okay? And again, we're used to seeing these. Negative numbers are just the opposites. So negative 5 is a negative number. Negative 23 and negative 981. These are all negative numbers. We'll be working with those as well. One number that is neither positive or negative, but we are going to work with them and it's still an integer, is 0. All right, so that's the weird one. It's not positive or negative. Before we get into actually adding these integers together, I want to give you an analogy that I use for positives and negatives to help you visualize what's going to be going on with these problems. So I like to think of a basket, and I always say that my basket has a weight of 0. That's our starting point, so that's going to be 0. Now, for positive numbers, like positive 1, I use helium balloons, okay? Because they make the basket lighter, they make it go up, okay? So positives are helium balloons. Negative numbers, like negative 1, are weights, because they make the basket heavier, so they would make them go down. So negative 1 would be represented by 1 weight. That's the visual I'm going to be using for our examples. Again, before we talk about that, let's go over what happens to the weight of our basket when we have both a helium balloon and a weight. We know that a helium balloon by itself would make the basket lighter, it would go up. A weight by itself would make the basket heavier, it would go down. If I have one of each, my basket, the weight of the basket, they cancel each other out, so we go back to 0, okay? So anytime you have one balloon, one weight, they'll cancel out, and we're back to our original amount. So let's use that concept with our video guide, starting with number 1. For number 1, we have 6 plus negative 4. And again, I'm going to use the visual. My suggestion would be after we've gone over the visuals, you won't want that anymore because it takes time, but it'll help you see where the rules are coming from that we're going to be using to add integers. So we're going to start with just our basket. This is 0. Now, our first number is a positive 6. If there's no sign in front, we assume that it's positive. So positive 6, I'm going to represent with 6 helium balloons. 6 balloons. We're adding to that, so we're putting 4 weights, or negative 4, onto my basket. So I'm going to put 4 weights at the bottom. 3, 4. Now we talked about how if we have one balloon and one weight, they actually cancel each other out and they don't change what's happening to the basket. So what I'm going to do is cancel out for every weight I have to take off a balloon. One weight, one balloon. And I can keep going. I have another weight, so I'll take off another balloon. And again, another weight for another balloon. And I've got one last weight and another balloon I can take off. At this point, I don't have any weights, so there's nothing else I can cancel. I'm only left with 2 balloons, so my answer is positive 2, because balloons represent positives. Now, even though this was an addition problem, with 6 and negative 4, what I actually did was subtract the 2 amounts, okay? Which which is where integers gets kind of weird. We're very used to seeing an addition sign, so I should add and I should get 10. But that's not how integers work, okay? Positives and negatives cancel each other out like balloons and weights, and we actually subtract the two amounts, and our answer is positive 2. So we are going to write down a couple of rules. Rule number 1, if the signs are different, and this is for adding integers, so if they are different, we subtract the two numbers. Okay? Anytime the signs are different, you're going to be subtracting because the balloons and the weights are going to cancel. All right? Now, to figure out if it's positive or negative, the rule that I have for that is that you just keep the sign of the bigger number. Because that's the one that you have the most of. After you're done canceling, because we have more balloons, it's positive 6 compared to negative 4, which is 4 weights. After you're done canceling, you're going to have more balloons. So it would make sense that the bigger number is the sign that we keep. So it would be positive 2. All right, so let's take a look at number 2. Again, we're on that video guide. So number 2, we have negative 11 plus 3. And I'm going to do that visual for you one more time. You can keep doing that if you would like, but remember, we're going to be using these rules, so we won't really need to draw the picture every time. Okay, so negative 11, that means I'm going to put 11 weights on my basket. And again, you can start seeing why it would not be ideal to draw this picture every single time, because that's a lot of weights. So we've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Whew. Add to that positive 3, so that would be 3 balloons. Now again, we're going to cancel. For every balloon that I take off, I have to also take off a weight, and just one weight. And same thing, 1 balloon for 1 weight. And last balloon, and another weight has to come off. So now, if I count up, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weights, which means we have 8, and if there are weights, it's a negative 8. And now let's check our rule. My rule said that I'm supposed to subtract the numbers if the signs are different. Well, this one's negative, this one's positive, so the signs are different. If I subtract them, 11 minus 3 is 8. My next rule says to keep the sign of the bigger number. Well, 11 is bigger than 3. 11's negative. My answer was negative. So my rules are great. Those are the ones that we want to follow. Okay, so negative 8 was correct. Let's move on. Let's take a look at number 3. Number 3, you should notice that one's a little bit different. We have negative 5 plus negative 5. All right, what's different about this is they are both negative. Okay, my rule up here says if the signs are different, I'm supposed to subtract. But they're not different. My signs are the same. This is a negative 5, this one's a negative 5. So again, let's visualize what's happening. Here's my basket. We start at a weight of 0. Negative 5. All right, that means 5 weights. So I'm going to add 5 weights to my basket. 3, 4, and 5. I'm supposed to add another 5 weights to my basket for this negative 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll notice after I put my 5 weights and my other 5 weights, I have no balloons on my basket. I started out with no positive numbers in the problem, so I should not have balloons on this basket, which means there's nothing to cancel out. So all I can do is count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weights that I have on my basket, which means 10 is my number, and it's negative because we're talking about weights. So this answer does not follow this rule, which means we need a new rule. Okay? last rule that we have for adding integers, I promise. If the signs are the same, we do not subtract anymore. We'll notice with -5 and -5, with the answer of 10, what I actually did was add the two numbers together. 5 plus 5, we got 10. So, if the signs are different, we subtract. If the signs are the same, we add. I'm going to stop there so we have more room. So I add the two numbers. Now, it says to keep the sign of the bigger number, okay? This rule. Does it apply here? Certainly it does. Even though they're both the same amount, 5 and 5, it doesn't matter which one you keep the sign of because this answer is supposed to be negative. So you can still keep the sign of the bigger number. If they're of equal amounts, then you just keep the sign of both of them. So this rule works for all problems. These two rules, you have to know if the signs are different or the same. So if they're different, subtract. If they're the same, add. So let's take a look at number 4 and try applying our rules instead of drawing pictures. We've got -7 plus 10. My first number is negative. My second number is positive. That means my signs are different, so I need to subtract the two amounts. So 10 minus 7 is 3. To determine if it's positive or negative, I keep the sign of the bigger number. Well, between 7 and 10, 10 is larger, which means I would have more balloons. So that means my answer should be positive. So positive 3 is our answer, and that's it. Let's take a look at number 5. For number 5, we have 3 plus -13. All right, go through the same steps. +3, -13. Think through. Those are different signs, so that means we follow the first rule. The signs are different, subtract. So 13 minus 3, I always do the larger one minus the smaller because that's what I'm used to, it's easier. 13 minus 3 is 10. It doesn't matter which order you do it in, you're still going to get 10. Now, we keep the sign of the bigger number. 13 is bigger than 3. Our 13 is negative, so our answer should be -10. That's it. Number 6. We have -16 plus -5. Now remember, the picture is still going to work for these problems. We're just applying the rules now. Again, especially because we're going to get up into some bigger numbers like a -16, it's going to take a while to draw -16 weights onto our basket. So instead of wasting that time, we'll just apply the rules, okay? This one's a -16, this is a -5. That means my signs are the same. So if my signs are the same, my rule tells me to add the two amounts. So 16 plus 5 gives us 21, and we keep the sign of the bigger number, always. For addition, we always keep the sign of the bigger number. 16 is bigger, so that means my answer is -21. And I'm done. And remember, if I have 16 weights and I'm putting 5 more weights on, that basket is just getting heavier and heavier. So it would make sense that I would end up with a larger negative amount, okay? An even heavier basket. And number 7, -8 plus 8. First one is a negative, the second one is a positive, which means follow the first rule. If the signs are different, we subtract. So 8 minus 8 is 0. Now remember, from the beginning of the video, I said 0 is a special number. It's neither positive nor negative, but it's still an integer. So I don't put a sign with 0, okay? I don't have to worry about which one is larger, because they're the same size, 8 and 8. So it's just 0. Don't put a positive sign, don't put a negative sign, just 0. All right, and the last one I want to do together, take a look at number 8. We have -1 plus -11. Okay, following the rules, we need to know if the signs are the same or different. Well, our first number is negative. The 11 is also negative, so that means the signs are the same. So if they're the same, it says we add. So add the two amounts together. 1 plus 11 is 12, and we have to keep the sign of the bigger number. 11 is bigger, so that means my answer should be negative. So the answer is negative 12. There are 4 problems at the end of this video guide. My suggestion would be pause the video here for a minute or two, work those 4 problems out, and then come back and check your answers because I will be putting them on the board. So, the answers for the problems at the bottom. Number 9, you were supposed to take negative 14 plus negative 7. Your answer should have been negative 21. For number 10, the problem is negative 9 plus 2. Your answer should be negative 7. Number 11 is 12 plus negative 5. The answer is positive 7. And number 12, the problem is 6 plus negative 6. Your answer should be 0. And now you know how to add integers.